Welcome into the DAV Podcast. This is episode number 3. Dan Klaskins and Ashley Burns here with you to take you around DAV Disabled American Veterans. And we are excited this episode to dive into Miracles on the Mountainside. It is our National Disabled Veterans Winter Sports Clinic, the topic of the day. And we're going to do that, take you around here, some of the great veteran stories. As always, you can subscribe to our podcast. You can do so on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and Stitcher too. Get it anytime. DAV.org/podcast, the homepage there. And DAV.org, the place where you can go if you're a veteran that needs some help or you would like to help us help veterans. You can donate there as well. But right now, lots of stories to get to and some good topics ahead. As I said, the National Disabled Veterans Winter Sports Clinic, a very special event. We do it every year. This spring, nearly 400 disabled veterans with traumatic brain and spinal cord injuries, orthopedic amputations, visual impairments, and much more. They spent a week of challenging and overcoming really perceived limitations. They did it through a variety of adaptive sports. And we're so excited to partner with the Department of Veterans Affairs. And we've done it now. This is the 33rd year of the event, of creating these miracles on the mountainside, if you will. And Ashley, I know you've been there. I know that you've worked around with this event for some time. And I know, like me, it has a special place in your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. This is by far one of the coolest and most invigorating events that we are part of every year. So like you said, for more than 3 decades now, the clinic's been helping disabled veterans challenge these perceived physical barriers and limitations and claim some really major victories in their lives. And DAV has been a longstanding partner with the VA to host this event, working side by side to ensure veterans are able to have this incredible experience. My first experience out there, I would say, was absolutely life-changing. I think you'd hear the same from anybody who's attended it. But it was back in 2012. And I just remember being so moved by the people that I met there, both the veterans and the caregivers and the volunteers. And there are so many fellow veterans that I'm still close with today from those first encounters out there. In fact, I really love going back every single year just to see how much progress they've made since the previous year, because that's really the point, right? You take these experiences out there, you fall, you get back up, you carry it home, and you use it to continue to challenge yourself and push yourself forward in your recovery. That's the whole point. So the question is, how is that done? How do you get an amputee or a paraplegic on skis and down the side of a mountain? And as you'll hear throughout today's podcast, there's almost always a way to make that happen with the help of a dedicated team of recreational therapists, coaches, and of course, our always important volunteers. And to tell it way, way better than I can, Army veteran Brent King and VA clinical program specialist Kendra Betts sat down with our own Dan Clare during their time in Snowmass earlier this year to talk about their own personal experiences at the National Disabled Veterans Winter Sports Clinic.
Hey, I'm joined today at the National Disabled Veterans Winter Sports Clinic by Kendra Betts, Clinical Programs Specialist for the VA National Center for Patient Safety, and Brent King, participant and Army veteran and DAV member. Guys, welcome to DAV's podcast.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having us.
Kendrick, tell us about what you do here at the event.
So I have been with the Winter Sports Clinic since 1997. And here at the event, I manage our seating and prosthetics team. So we are a group of clinical professionals, physical therapists, occupational therapists, physiatrists, orthotists, prosthetists, rehab engineers, and technology specialists. And we're really here to help our individuals who use wheelchairs, who use prosthetic limbs. We dial in their equipment that they use every day, and we transfer that over into sit skis, ice sleds. We adjust prosthetic limbs so that individuals can be successful in skiing, snowboarding, playing hockey, getting on a snowmobile, whatever they possibly need. We are here to make this a fantastic experience.
Thanks for doing it. And how long have you known Brent?
I've known Brent. We go back to 1994 when he was injured as an active duty service member in the United States Army. I was a physical therapist at the Spinal Cord Injury Center in Seattle, Washington, and Brent came to Seattle for his rehabilitation after his acute spinal cord injury then.
Brent, besides joining the Army, what brought you here?
You know, the Winter Sports Clinic in 1995, I didn't want to go skiing again. I didn't know what it would be like. The chief prosthetics in Spokane, VA, and my dad got together, and I was sleeping all day and staying up all night watching TV, and they made me go to the Winter Sports Clinic, and that pulled me out of the pity party pretty quick when you see 75 plus more veterans there skiing with a smile on their face, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. And that just changed my whole outlook on life and my attitude. So, and well, 17 years, I've got 17-year-old twins and a wife. Got married a year and a half after the Veterans Winter Sports Clinic, and I'd met my wife just before the Winter Sports Clinic that year.
Yeah.
So it's and it's one of my favorite things because I get out of the wheelchair, leave it behind. I don't have gravity does most of the work on the chairlift, and it's just fun, something that I can do a life sport with my family.
That's great. What happened in the service?
I was rappelling down a 40-foot tower, and I was about halfway down, and an overweight lieutenant whipped a rope, and it threw a wave up the rope, and it just sounded like a whip cracking, and it threw me 18 feet, and I hit in the back of my head and shoulder, and burst the last vertebra at T12 right under my rib cage, and I woke up 21 days later. I don't remember it. So, and then I think it's 5 years ago, I had bone infections, and they had to take my legs off at the pelvis. So the seating then comes into huge. I didn't think I was going to ski again. So
it's amazing. But in that time, I mean, it's been decades since your injury. What have you learned? What have you learned as a result of adaptive sports? What does it do for you?
There's always a way to make it work if you try hard. Almost always a way to make it work. And we've been tweaking my monoski seating and I think we've been through 3 different skis to get it right, and it just it makes me safe and in control, and something I can do every weekend with my family.
Kendra, what advice do you have for veterans who are trying to get into rehabilitative sports?
Get out there. I always say get off the couch and out the door. All of us have our favorite sports that we're interested in being involved in. You can do it. So whatever you were doing before, if that's a passion, we can find a way to get you back into that sport with the appropriate adaptations to allow you to be successful there. The equipment that you're using in that sport becomes extremely important. Just as we dial in a prosthetic leg for walking, that is very specific to support that individual to walk as perfectly as they can. In working with people who use wheelchairs, we have very customized seating, and the seating is the interface between the person and the wheelchair that they're using, so the cushion and back support. It's absolutely critical that we get very appropriate seating systems in this sitting equipment, because individuals who participate in adaptive sports often have challenges with managing skin integrity, so a little bump or a bruise could become a really big problem. The other thing that's really important is just getting the right postural support. So people that have paralysis or have polytraumatic injuries often have a hard time just sitting up, and seeking the clinical support and the technical support to get that equipment just right is really absolutely critically important. Brent and I go back to 1994, and our primary work at that time was working on his custom wheelchair and his custom seating system to support him as a T12 para, which is paralyzed from about the belly button down. He had both of his legs at the time, and we still needed to get everything dialed in just right. And just through a series of unfortunate events, as Brent commented, he now gets around all day, every day in a very custom wheelchair. He does not have either of his legs all the way up to the pelvis. And what's important is we work with him along the way, not only in his everyday wheelchair, but in his monoski equipment. And every time he's had a change in his medical condition, we have addressed that medical condition, we've adjusted the equipment, we've adjusted the seating system to now he sits in the equivalent of a very customized bucket with suspenders that come up and over his shoulders, with a lock-in system that goes over the top of him to really lock him into that shell. And I saw him coming down the mountain today, and I could hardly believe how well he's skiing, how fast he's skiing. And we're going to have to go take a run to see if I can even keep up anymore.
Yeah, and I've got to say that once I'm skiing, I still have nerve pain in my hips from my spinal cord being crushed, and it turns off. The nerve pain is gone when I'm skiing and doing an activity. So I don't know why it does that, but it clicks and I have no pain. And it usually, at being more active, some people it makes it worse. But for me, I also have a seating for a golf cart, basketball chair, hand cycle. It rides. Yep. It's done these cushions for me. If I wasn't in these custom cushions, I wouldn't have the balance and the better posture and seating ability.
And I saw where you're making that stuff here.
Yeah, we do a lot of customizations here at the Winter Sports Clinic, and it's something that's very special about this clinic. So we're learning a lot in adaptive sports, and I like to do a lot of education for the people that are involved, providing education and guidance for clinical providers that work in the VA and work in the private sector that might be working with our veterans, but also to the instructors. So often the instructors who are supporting adaptive sports are not healthcare professionals. They often have other full-time jobs as attorneys, accountants, teachers. It's not their everyday understanding of what these complexities are. We do a lot of education with both the instructors and the clinicians and show them how we can provide customized pieces inside of adaptive sports equipment to give people the support and to give people the skin protection in a customized system that really supports them to learn how to do that sport and be really successful and perform well in that sport. So, Brent commented also that, this is just one of his sports. He has a dozen different sports that he participates in. And, it's what's amazing about VA. And the VA is the greatest healthcare system in the world, undeniably, because we take care of our veterans for their entire life. So I've been with the VA for 25 years. Proud to say, in my very first job, and I just keep moving around and finding ways to do good work. And it's an amazing healthcare system because we provide all of the equipment that individuals need and the customizations that go with that equipment for all of the activities that they're actively involved in. And I guarantee you will not find that in the private sector. You will not find that support from any other healthcare system in the world. So I'm proud to be part of it, and I'm really proud to support service members like Brent.
I see what the civilian world gets for their equipment, and it's nothing like what we have. So I've never had any complaints. The VA's taken very good care of me over the years, along with all the therapists, doctors, nurses. I've been, last stint was 3 years in the VA hospital with 25 surgeries and 19 units of donated blood. So I'm glad to be here.
Brent, what would you tell your fellow veterans about getting involved in events like this?
Just got to come try it. Get off the couch, and the resources are there if you want to look for them and ask. If you sit at home and just procrastinate, you're missing a great, valuable asset that the VA provides and DAV provides.
Kendra, thank you so much for your time. This has been great. Brent, good luck out on the slopes tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'll be chasing him.
I love hearing those stories, and that is definitely a good one. And that's the best part of this event, is every veteran who participates has a story to tell. And we're going to hear another story now as Dan Clare caught up with Army veteran Rosie Babin, the mother and caregiver of disabled Army veteran Alan Babin, during their time together at the National Disabled American Veterans Winter Sports Clinic. She talked about the impact the event has had on her son and their family over the years, and much more.
We're joined today by Rosie Babin. Rosie is a caregiver of the great soldier Alan Babin. Rosie, welcome to DAV's podcast.
Thanks, Dan.
Tell us a little bit. We're here at the National Disabled Veterans Winter Sports Clinic. It's an event put on by the Department of Veterans Affairs and DAV, and an event you've been going to for quite some time. Tell us about how you got started with the clinic.
Well, our son was catastrophically wounded in Iraq in 2003 and spent about 2.5 years in hospitals. But we were blessed that he was accepted into the spinal cord injury clinic at the San Antonio VA, where they had an incredible recreational therapist, Jose Laguna, who, within a week of Alan arriving at spinal cord, had him out, bowling with a ramp. Just incredible to us. And so he recommended that Alan attend the clinic, and his first time was in 2006.
And Alan, just to go back a little bit, Alan was one of the people, he was a medic in the United States Army, and he was one of the people injured in the very early part of the war when it was pretty hard to get the medical evacuation system wasn't where
Exactly. Alan was wounded on March 31st, 2003, so he's up here celebrating his Alive Day yesterday, his 16th Alive Day. Woo! Yes, and absolutely, was one of the first very severely wounded in Iraq. So just, 9-10 days after the war started, was also one of the first catastrophically wounded as he was, that arrived at Walter Reed. So,
and he was going to save another soldier's life.
He was. Alan was a medic with the 82nd Airborne Division, and they were in the middle of the worst firefight the 82nd had been in since World War II. And a fellow paratrooper got a gunshot wound to the head. Turned out that it only grazed his ear and bounced off his helmet, but of course, being a head wound, just profusely bled, and so a call for a medic rang out, and Alan left the safety of a covered position to rush to render aid to him, and was shot by an AK-47 by Fedayeen. And Alan actually lay on the hood of a gun truck for 3.5 hours because the firefight was so severe they could not get a helicopter near there to evacuate him.
The golden hour was gone for him.
The golden hour was gone for him.
And what did that cost? What did that do to Alan?
So Alan suffered extensive damage to his abdomen. He lost 90% of his stomach. His spleen, part of his pancreas, suffered a lot of diaphragmatic injury and a lot of what looked like burns, and has had to have skin grafts from, different areas in his limbs, in his groin area, where they injected epinephrine to bring him back every time they almost lost him. So then 6 weeks after surviving the battlefield, while he was a patient at Walter Reed, he contracted meningitis and suffered a stroke. So Alan underwent over 70 abdominal surgeries, countless procedures, special procedures, and then the stroke happened, and he became really semi-comatose for about 2.5 years. So his recovery has been more stroke recovery, traumatic brain injury recovery, than the physical recovery. The physical, within a year, we had gotten him to a good place, healed up, really severe wounds, pressure sores from, laying in a bed. We couldn't turn him because his abdomen was open, looked like a huge football, sternum to pelvis and side to side, because they take him in for washouts and repair every 2 or 3 days into the OR. So, it was very difficult to reposition him to prevent bed sores. And so it was a very, talk about being in a surgical ICU for 7 months. And at the time, Alan was the patient that had been there the longest. Now, as patients live at Walter Reed for 2 or 3 years while they get prosthetics and medical care, but it was a very, very difficult medical journey for him.
And for you, here you're heading towards, you're pretty far. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel as an empty nester, right? Everything changed too.
Oh, absolutely. We, my husband and I had, so we have a daughter that's 7 years younger than Alan and was a sophomore in high school at the time. And so we had started taking dance lessons weekly, really working on preparing for an empty nest and, not having the challenges that some couples face, and looking forward to traveling. And it quickly became, one, I never left Alan's bedside once we were finally able to reach him at Walter Reed. And certainly after the stroke, there was no way I was going to leave him because he had no way of communicating his needs. So I became his voice and have remained, I quit my job managing a firm in Austin, Texas. And my husband, who's in law enforcement, was able to stay with us at Walter Reed for 2.5 months, but then had to return home to work and to care for our daughter and our home. And so after Alan finally came home, May of 2005, and Christy by then was off in college, it really became a family of 3. And we're looking towards my husband's retirement at the end of this year, and it'll be 3 of us in our retirement, and we're looking forward to it and have started making plans, get our bucket list ready, so that we can support Alan in whatever endeavor and experience he wants to undertake.
And you and your husband are both veterans yourselves?
Army veterans, yes.
Army veterans. And in addition to all these things, it's one thing to become immersed in the role of a caregiver, but also you've become a leader among your fellow caregivers and among women veterans now. You're hosting, you're helping organize the Women Veterans event this evening?
Correct. It's our 6th year to host it.
And in addition to that, there's the TBI group that meets here.
Yes, that'll be tomorrow.
Tell me about that group.
It's an incredible group. I remember when we first started coming, and our dear friend who we've lost, Cheryl Lynch, created that. It was the first time that we attended a support group, but it didn't feel like a support group. It felt more like being amongst friends, because there were people that, you see here. It was the first time that we were hearing things that veterans, patients, families were going through that we were experiencing. We have a tremendous support system in our family and in our friends, but they don't understand what our day-to-day life is like. But the special things that it takes to listen for Alan, who, when he came to the clinic, you probably remember he would communicate with a yeah and a no. And as his language became better, he was still very difficult to understand. Now Alan can hold his own interviews with a reporter, and he's very well understood. But, for a long time, the stress of that, of making sure that we clearly understood what Alan was trying to communicate was really not something those that didn't live with TBIs and speech and hearing and all of that could understand. Traveling with somebody with a brain injury, who, in our case, Alan tends to fixate on his schedule, does best in familiar surroundings. His meals are on schedule, and all of that just gets thrown out the window when you travel. Bowel and bladder management, you have to hold fluids and solids so that you don't have accidents while you're traveling. And so here we were in a room of families that got it. And it was just incredible. We arrived at this clinic focused on Alan's disabilities, on all his medical needs and medical issues. And after a week at this clinic, we left full of hope, with our sleeves rolled up, pretty much saying, buddy, hold on to your hat, because there's a lot of things you can do. Even with a physical and brain injury, the world is just open to you. We just have to figure out how to live a new normal and how to adapt to our new life.
What activities is Alan going to be doing this week?
Well, his favorite is downhill skiing in a sit ski, and he is actually at the Aspen ice rink right now, curling, which he really enjoys, and he'll be sled mobiling. He has also enjoyed the scuba diving in the pool. We're trying to find a new solution to that. He lives with a shunt in his brain that drains spinal fluid, and so it's become a little painful for him to use goggles around that area, but I know there has to be a solution for that, so it's on my to-do list to find a way for him to continue to do that.
Alan is actually one of our past Freedom Award recipients from the clinic. And I remember watching him when his name was announced in front of all the other participants. And he just absolutely lit up with this hallmark smile that he has. Everybody who knows Alan knows this smile. He's really just got this incredible infectious passion and enthusiasm, which is so inspiring to everyone who's around him. But we know that it can be a real struggle for veterans to overcome the dark periods that often follow these life-changing injuries and illnesses that occur during military service. DAV member Mike Simon is a veteran who'd participated in the Winter Sports Clinic since 2010, and he sat down with us and reflected on his service to the nation and talked a little bit about how the Winter Sports Clinic has helped pull him out of his funk following his life-saving brain surgery.
The Winter Sports Clinic brings a lot of different people together with different experiences, different backgrounds, and we're joined by one of those veterans today, Mike Simon, out of the DAV Department of Minnesota, as what you're a participant as well as a member of the DAV in Minnesota.
Yes, a life member of the DAV, yes.
And Mike, you're here this week. What activities are you doing?
My primary reason I'm here is alpine downhill skiing. I love it. I've been learning when I was a little kid. I did it on and off in college, and then early 30s when I got injured and sick. Skiing is what pulled me out of my funk when I came to this clinic the first time in, I think it was 2010. I was in a complete funk for close to 18 months after I had my surgery and going through rehab. I mean, your world gets thrown upside down. And when I came to this and I saw other folks, and we all had something in common regardless of branch, generation, injury. We're all common bond. I call it my family away from my family.
Now, you joined the military in 2001, right after
2003.
2003. So it was after 9/11. But did 9/11 inspire you to join?
Yes, it did, because I'd never served in any way. I realized about that time is I had the corporate life and my corporate sales, and I did fine. But I realized I never really did anything. And I always wanted to do something like that. And I thought I was too old, but my neighbor said, no, son said you can get in up to a certain age. So
33?
I was, 35, but I get in a couple of years before that.
Okay.
And so he handed me his card, our recruiter's card. I kind of hemmed and hawed for a couple of weeks. I finally went and talked to him, and then I signed up.
So you were the old man in boot camp.
Correct.
What did you choose to do? What was your military specialty?
My specialty was signal support specialist, and I chose that a lot simply because one of my civilian career jobs is I sold two-way communications. So I figured I'd had kind of a background, and so that's simply why I chose it.
You had to have known that you were probably going to go overseas, right?
Yes, originally, I'm sure like a lot of us might have been in denial a little bit, but I thought, because Minnesota Guard sent a lot of people to Bosnia and Kosovo, so I was hoping to get on one of those missions. But Iraq seemed to, that became the forefront of what our agenda was, and so I got it happened. So,
and that's where you went?
Correct.
What year did you go?
2005, we were activated, so we did 6 months of train up in Mississippi. And so in April of 2006, or March 31st of 2006, we landed in Kuwait City. And we got to our base of CSC Scania, or the battalion I was assigned to, about the middle of April of 2006.
What was going on in Iraq at that time? It was kind of after that initial start of the war and before the surge, right?
Correct. In our area, Scania was relatively quiet. It was about 80 to 100 miles south of Baghdad. I can't even remember, but it was southwest of Baghdad. And it was relatively quiet. But, we had a few incidents of indirect fire and mortar and so forth, but it was very limited activity. Where things started to heat up a little bit is when they called in the surge of 2007. We got extended, which more disappointing, I think, a lot to our families at home than some of us. I mean, I was freshly married, but that was the time they kind of started dialing in on us. I think the surge pushed a lot of the element out of Baghdad and other places, so they came down to our area.
Coming home, your wife noticed you were different.
Correct.
But you were initially misdiagnosed. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, it was about 9 months after I got back. I went back to my civilian career and so forth, and then I even got a new civilian job. And I'd hit what I thought was some folks' idea, the big time. I was making 6 figures in sales or whatever, and that was not too shabby. And I was still doing the Guard and other things. But my wife noticed, you're not the same man I married. You're kind of short, you're uptight, everything else. So you need to go down and talk to somebody and see if maybe you can get, medicated and have some counseling. And then I just simply got misdiagnosed as bipolar and a couple of other things. And it just wasn't the most thorough diagnosis or testing or evaluation is what happened.
It was something else was going on.
Correct. In 90 days from the time when I first went to see something, our world just went upside down. I mean, there's things I don't even really want to talk about. It's just, I showed that I really didn't give a hoot. Normally I can be have compassion and be sensitive and understanding, but it's like, who cares? My wife suffered a miscarriage. I didn't care. I had a death of a sister. I didn't, and it just, everything went down. So, I almost lost my marriage and my family over that.
What was the actual diagnosis?
When they finally did the MRI, they found the third largest frontal lobe tumor in the history of the VA healthcare system. It was a 9 by 12 centimeter meningioma. And as my wife describes it, it was abnormal meningioma because it was growing. I mean, the thing essentially ran out of room to grow.
And it was, what did that do to you?
Well, not only my personality got just horrible, and then I started to, when my wife got me out, I went to a different hospital, not to VA, to get the surgery because we, wanted to get who they thought was the most qualified surgeon to do that sort of operation.
Very technical kind
Correct.
of thing. And this is a brain tumor, right?
Yes.
Okay. And how did that go?
Surprisingly, of course, I don't remember the whole process because I was kind of falling out of it. Everything was shutting down, according to my wife. It went very well. It was a 17-hour surgery. I had my sister-in-law. They had connections. We got, I think one of the best neurosurgeons in the country, Dr. Jerome Kennedy, who we actually named our daughter after.
What is her name?
Kennedy.
How beautiful.
So, but after that, it was a long recovery. So we went back to the VA for rehabilitation, and I started outpatient rehabilitation for 2 weeks, and they decided, well, you want to accomplish too much. You had too much potential. So next thing you know, I'm back in the VA. I was there for 6 months in the polytrauma.
Do you, what are the residual effects of your injury?
I went from being a workaholic to working probably 60 to 70 hours a week in my civilian career and then doing the military duties, to not being able to do that anymore. Like, when I work hard or whatever I do, I give it 110%. But I'll get tired or fatigued, and it's not physical fatigue I can handle, it's mental fatigue.
As a result of the tumor?
Yes, I had a job one time where a third of my customers, I talked to offshore accounts, but a third of my customers I spoke Spanish to, but I was basically looking at a computer screen all day. There is no way I could do that job today because looking at a computer screen all day would wear me out and be a total risk of seizures.
How have adaptive sports changed your life?
Like as I said, skiing, coming to this clinic pulled me out of my funk. And then now, because of that, I went to the DAV the summer of 2010. I went to the summer sports clinic as a result because somebody suggested. And I got on a bike. And now I'm doing triathlons in the summer. My long-term goal is to do an Ironman, but I went from doing sprints. I did 2 international distance races. I actually got second in my para division in the international at Chicago Triathlon, which, I was surprised, but I was happy. I just wanted to finish the thing. So, but that's what I want to do long term. But if I hadn't come to this clinic and I hadn't started skiing again, who knows what would happen or where I would be. I don't think I would be out volunteering or advocating for veterans, like Minnesota veterans, as far as getting things, helping, making sure not just us, but our dependents are taken care of. And I wouldn't be doing triathlons. And our daughter, we adopted Kennedy. Who knows what would have happened. So it all started coming to this.
Mike Simon, thank you for your service, and thanks for being a participant.
Thank you.
DAV helps over 1 million veterans every single year. We couldn't do it without the generous support of our donors and a lot of our supporters, and that includes often some celebrity ambassadors that go out of their way to help veterans and make a difference in veterans' life. And the Winter Sports Clinic has been a popular place for some of these folks to show up over the years. And this year, a really great visit from actor and comedian Eric Stolansky. Of course, he made his mark starring in Super Troopers, and now he's leaving his mark on some veterans. He stopped by this year at the National Disabled American Veterans Winter Sports Clinic to interact with our nation's heroes and offer his own story of inspiration.
For those of us who served in Iraq, movies were a big thing. If you're overseas, everyone would have a hard drive. Everyone would go to the bazaar, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of movies were available. Some of them, honestly, they were filmed in the theater by people watching the movie.
What?
But the movies made us laugh, and I think for one generation certainly who served right after 9/11, the movie Super Troopers was one of those movies that was kind of like a generation's Animal House, and that's why it's so great to be here with Eric Stolansky, actor, writer, comedian, one of the founding members of the Broken Lizard comedy group. Great guy. You're returning again to the National Disabled Veterans Winter Sports Clinic, Eric. Welcome to DAV's podcast.
Hi, Dan. It's good seeing you again.
It's good seeing you again, too.
Old hat, you and I.
Yeah.
We've been pals for a while now. So it's good to be back. 2012 was the last time I was here.
Yeah.
And so, and then we spent some time in Minneapolis together at a DAV event. And thanks for having me back. It's really exciting to be here.
Man, it is. It's great for us. Tonight, here at the clinic, put on by DAV and the Department of Veterans Affairs, we're going to be screening Super Troopers 2, a movie that took a little while to get out.
There's an understatement.
What happened there? Tell me about the process.
Oh, how much time you got? It was an ordeal. Super Troopers was one of those movies that had a lot of success on DVDs. I mean, it did okay in the box office, did about $18 million, but it sold 5 million DVDs, and it was one of those movies that kind of caught on with audiences afterwards in box office. So when we went back many years later to say, there's a lot of people asking about the sequel, Super Troopers 2, would you be interested? When we went back to Fox Searchlight and asked them if they would be interested in making the sequel, they weren't 100% sure that the audience was still there many years later, right? They weren't hearing it on the street as we heard it, that people wanted a sequel or knew that there was an appetite for it. And so they said, well, we love the idea. We love the original movie. We will distribute in theaters if you are willing to raise the money. And so we also went to some investors, and it was a little hard for them as well to know if the audience was there. And so we didn't want to give up on the dream of making a sequel, so we turned to crowdfunding. And we did an Indiegogo campaign, and we set the original goal for $2 million to shoot the sequel, not knowing if anybody would contribute. And we actually reached that initial goal within 20 hours. And after 30 days, 54,000 people contributed to give us a budget of $4.5 million via crowdfunding to make the sequel.
I mean, the film is irreverent. It's not for everybody, but for the group of people I was thinking of, the folks who, right after 9/11 came out in 2001, I mean, it was playing in the theater hospital while people were giving blood. And, I mean, you needed a reason to laugh, when you're deployed. What kind of response do you get from the veterans you meet here at the Winter Sports Clinic?
Well, I'll tell you what, when we did get response from the movie and people liked it, some of the most meaningful responses for us were when people said that we were overseas and we were serving, and it gave us that couple hours of just forgetting about things and just allowing us to laugh. And it had a great impact on us. It really, really affected all of us. And it was very meaningful for us. We made a film, just something that made us laugh and wanted to make people laugh, but we didn't realize it would actually have an impact on people's lives. And that was very meaningful to us. And so when people came up with this sports clinic and said that it was a film that they had meaning for them and that made them laugh, and they want to say thank you. And I want to say thank you more to them in return.
You were not a veteran. You didn't serve in the military, but you have something in common with most of the folks here. You're an amputee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wasn't allowed to join. I was born without a fibula in my leg, and so I was raised on a wooden leg. Actually, not that long ago in time, I'm not that old, my legs when I was growing up were made of wood. You go chop down a tree in the backyard and just cut a hole in it practically and throw a gym sock on and put it on. Technology has improved so much. Now there's silicone liners and computers and all sorts of different advancements. But growing up, I grew up on a wooden leg. It's like George Washington.
Just like George Washington.
Just like Washington. He had wooden teeth. I had a wooden leg. He had wooden teeth.
There you go. The veterans you meet out here, what do you think? What do you think when you see them participating in the activities that they're doing?
Oh, boy. I mean, it's impactful. I mean, the fact that they're getting on the mountain and trying to just live their lives again. I mean, that's what all of us want. I think your amputee is just to be able to enjoy life just like everybody else. We want to feel that wind in our face going down the mountain, and we want to get out there and do some fishing and just do all the other activities everyone else does and be like everybody else.
Your prosthetic leg is so realistic looking that we were talking earlier. When you go through the airport, they don't believe that it's a prosthesis.
Yeah.
What do you think when you see people all the time here wearing shorts with prosthetic limbs? What do you feel? What does that make you think?
Well, I love the courage. I grew up when I was young. I was sort of embarrassed of being handicapped. I just wanted to fit in when I was young. I think a lot of kids do have that feeling when they're in elementary school. They don't want to be picked on. They just want to fit in. And I didn't want to either. So I always wore shorts. I was afraid to wear. I always wore long pants. I was afraid to wear shorts. And as I've gotten older, I don't care anymore. So I'm happy to wear shorts. But I just love people that come back and they have prosthetics and they don't even put a cover on it anymore, right? They just have the hardware that's just out there in the world, and they put the shorts on and
a DAV sticker.
A DAV sticker plastered right on there, and they just get out there and they wear it proudly. I love that. I have a cover on mine, for acting. If I ever have a role where I am wearing shorts, I found an artist in Pasadena it's called Aesthetic Prosthetics, and it's absolutely incredible. It could be for hands or feet or legs. If you just want to have psychology of not sticking out or not people staring. If you lose a finger, you could have a finger cut off in a woodworking accident or something like that. They will create a finger that looks like it just is like your thumb. If you cut it off the thumb or an index finger, it would just go right back on. You wouldn't even notice that. And for me, they created a cover on my leg where they have an artist that sculpts it to match the other one, and they put this cover on. I think it's just a silicone cover. And then an artist hand paints all the veins, and they take the quill off of a duck quill, all the quills off of a duck quill, and individually put it on the leg so it looks like it has hair.
It's incredible.
So when I can show you, obviously you can't see people who are listening, but it looks just like just looks like the other leg. If I pulled up the hem of my pants on both my legs, you basically can't really tell the difference. It looks like I have two real legs.
Wow, that was a very, very quick episode indeed. We appreciate everyone for sticking with us here. A great look back at this spring's Winter Sports Clinic, one of the many ways that DAV helps veterans and their families. And Ashley, 3 episodes down here, we've got another one coming up in episode number 4, a topic that is featured in our June magazine as well. As we get into transgender veterans, and you had the opportunity to meet with the focus of that story, which is Sharon Heron.
I did, yep. So in episode 4, we'll head to my home state of Michigan for a story about veterans helping veterans, which really is the core mission of DAV. So I had a chance to sit around with this group of veterans and talk to them about kind of what had gone on for the past year. But it's this group of Vietnam veterans at a DAV chapter helping one of their own, who's a transgender veteran named Sharon Heron, through her battle with cancer and some other struggles that she was having on the home front during her treatment period. Really heartwarming story, really worth a listen. And we'll also be joined by VA's Dr. Michael Koth, who is the director for the department's LGBT health program, and has some really great info to share on everything the department is doing to better serve minority veterans.
That's going to be a great episode to catch. You won't want to miss that. Don't miss the DAV podcast anytime. You can subscribe to it on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and Stitcher too. DAV.org/podcast. That's the way to find it anytime. And be sure to follow us on social media as well, like DAV's Facebook page. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, a great spot to keep up with DAV as well. We always appreciate your time and your support. If you want to help some veterans yourself, you can do so. Make a donation. Visit DAV.org to do that. Until next time around, for Ashley Burns and all of us here at DAV, I'm Dan Klaskins. Thanks for listening and have a great day.